Take it away.
Coming out to the Closeout Summit with me. I'm Dave. I'm a senior PM on the Jira Cloud team at Atlassian, and I think I don't have a clicker, so I'm gonna just try not to wander around the stage too much. Let's cut to the chase because it's a lightning talk. So I want to start with a big hairy question. What do you think a product manager does? A product manager typically has three main responsibilities. You want to describe the requirements, prioritize the roadmap, and make sure that the product team is working on the right thing at the right time. Worst case scenario, you just want to keep the business people away from the development team so they can actually get stuff done. And this works great when products are like canoes. You just have to point it in the right direction and make sure that it doesn't sink. Pretty much anybody can row a canoe. But today, products are more like airplanes. They move quite a bit faster. They're running them and operating them is a little bit more complicated. And most importantly, if things blow up, the consequences are a lot more catastrophic. It used to be that you could just tell people to turn it off and turn it back on again, and it works. But when you're operating a service that has tens of thousands of users or customers, you're counting your downtime by the second. You have to worry about data integrity, security, people trolling you on Twitter. It's serious stuff. So if I want to go to a second question, what does a product manager care about? Well, we care about customers. We care about the needs of the customer, and as a product manager, you're the advocate for the customer. And the way that we serve those customers is changing. You're no longer building a product, you're running a service. And there are some substantial differences between what customers expect when you're running services compared to building products. A whole bunch of things that weren't really factors before are all of a sudden shoot to the top of the list. Things like reliability, performance, security, compliance. Customers are paying you to care about that stuff so that they don't have to. And a couple practices have emerged to make this easier on development teams. DevOps is practices that encourage collaboration and communication between software and IT. You're going to learn that this talk is a lot more about product management. I'm not going to go super deep into DevOps itself, because what I really want to focus on, you've got DevOps, collaboration between development and IT, SRE, which is what happens when developers are tasked with what's supposed to be used to be called operations. But really the common thread is that they're both geared towards involving developers directly into the operational process. And they elevate reliability and performance to be kind of first-class concerns on the dev team. And so all dev teams are ops teams now. And from the perspective of a product manager, that means that you really need to change your approach and your focus in order to make sure that you're running a product team like an ops team. I want to walk you through two ways that we've changed at Atlassian and on the Jira team in order to make running services a success. The first change we made, going back a couple years now, was to start treating performance as a feature. So why is that important? Your customers can't make it better themselves. They are paying you to be useful, and that usually means being fast. And so the biggest shift we made on the Jira Cloud team is to focus on our attention on a specific measure of performance that we call AppDex. So what's AppDex? Is anybody familiar with AppDex already? So AppDex is a way to measure user-perceived performance. So it's not back-end performance or CPU. It's directly how fast users think Jira is. So we basically look at the amount of time it takes from when a user makes a request to when they see something useful on the screen. And then we set criteria for what we think a good response time is, and what acceptable response time is, and what an unacceptable response is. And then you just take the good requests and get half a point for the OK requests and divide it by the total, and you get a score between 0 and 1. So long story short, we've been over the last couple of years, we've rallied a huge swath of the Jira Cloud team around AppDex as our #1 goal. We report AppDex on a daily basis back to the whole teams. We have builds and tests that measure the AppDex score of Jira as we develop it. And we make sure that QAs and designers and engineers are all thinking about the impact that the individual changes they make will be to our AppDex score. And once we started making those cultural changes, we saw the amount of negative customer feedback we got about performance fall by more than half. And there was a direct correlation between improvements in our AppDex score and improvements in our NPS score. And that's the kind of thing that product managers care about, because it really means that you're making a concrete positive improvement in your customer's experience by investing in performance. Taking a step back, though, a key part of running services is making sure that you are ready to release in the first place. Our airplane from the beginning needs to be fast, but it doesn't matter if it's fast if we can't even get it off the ground. And when you're getting ready to release a new service, it really helps to have a checklist. Every service, big or small at Atlassian, goes through the same process to make sure what we call operational readiness. So whether that's a mission critical piece of infrastructure like DNS resolution, or something simpler like a people directory, or even something simpler like that new Sketch plugin that you saw in the keynote today, they all go through that process, which we call Credo. So we use Jira to actually track this process. So when you're getting ready to launch a new service at Atlassian, you register your service, and we automatically generate a parent issue and a bunch of subtasks based on how mission critical your service is. So the number of tasks that are going to be under your Credo overview kind of differs whether you're doing something like Atlassian account logins, which is really important and can't ever go down, versus maybe image effects in Confluence. And there are basically two principles at work here, process and automation. So by following a standardized process, we reduce the number of inconsistencies between our services. We know that every single service has documentation for who can access it, where the logs are, how to contact the team. And then by automating the checklist, we can reduce the friction for the individual dev team who's running that service, and that makes it easier for everybody to adopt. And so as a product manager, you're directly responsible for some of these processes, particularly around something like support readiness. Support engineers need to not only know how to fix the problem, but also like the larger purpose of the service. It's, a support engineer might see that the service is down, but there's a bug in the service, but determining exactly how critical that bug is something that a product manager can help prepare support to understand the larger context. And as a product manager, you really own the customer's experience. So you should care a lot about whether it takes 4 hours for your service to recover from infrastructure failure or 8. That makes a huge difference to your customers. And the second part of being ready to release is to make sure that you've consulted with experts. If you're lucky enough to have a dedicated SRE team, you should take advantage. Those are engineers with domain-specific knowledge about performance and scalability, crazy edge cases that we've seen in production. And having that conversation between SRE, engineering, and product management can help the engineers understand the possible implications, and the product manager, plan that work with the engineering team. And even if you don't have a dedicated SRE team, make sure that you're thinking about scaling architecture, capacity, and change rollout. We have a list of questions and checklists that product teams go through when you're first starting to architect your service at Atlassian, so that we have those conversations within the development team, and we take those into consideration when we're planning our features. And finally, it's really important to document your decisions. Whether things go wrong or right, you want to be able to look back at the path that led up to releasing a feature, and remember, you don't want to realize that you don't know why something works the way it did, or why you chose to release the way that you did. And so we found that having a standard template for that kind of decision, especially around technical work, really helps at Atlassian. We call ours a DAISY for driver, approver, contributors, and inform. We use the Confluence blueprint to make sure that every decision follows the same structure. And basically, that makes it easier for the approvers, for everybody contributing to have that standardized process. So if you want to get started with a Daisy for yourself, it's part of the Atlassian team playbook. So you can just head on over to go.atlassian.com/Daisy, and you can download that as a Confluence blueprint or as a PDF version of that you can just start using within your team. So as we got to more mature and as more and more teams take responsibility for running services, we all need to get better at the critical pieces of service ownership that go into running services. And one of those is monitoring. It used to be that when you released a bug, you would find out when support requests started coming in. But now you need to be detecting problems before your customers notice anything. You can have all the green builds and automated testing that you like, but the fact is that sometimes things will still go wrong. And that's why DevOps focuses on mean time to resolution as a metric. This is a measure of how fast you can resolve an issue after you notice a failure. That means detecting it fast, assessing the solution, and then releasing a fix. The key thing to take away as a product manager is that your customer happiness in the new world of running services has a lot less to do with how many bugs you release and a lot more to do with how fast you can fix the bugs that you do ship to production. So how do you detect problems before they hit your customers? You put measurements in place, like monitoring. But obviously Atlassian has gotten a lot more mature with how we respond to analytics events, and it's ingrained in our PMs as we put our as we establish analytics events, it's ingrained in our PMs and our QAs that we should be thinking about analytics and users when we write our user stories and implementing those analytics from the very beginning. It's part of every requirements document that we put together at Atlassian. Obviously, events aren't perfect. We can be firing a lot of events and still have problems. That's where error rates come in. We need to know that a customer isn't just loading that new page, but it's actually showing the right thing. And obviously, even if it's showing the right thing, if it took 15 seconds to load, that's no good. So we need to be measuring performance as well. Unless you're staring at a dashboard all day, you need to have a way to know that something's gone wrong. So that's the final piece of the puzzle, which is alerting. One thing that we've actually done when releasing those changes that's really helped our process is adopting feature flags really far more than we ever were before. Essentially, feature flags allow you to separate out the engineering aspect of deploying a change from the product aspect of releasing that change to customers. It's easier than ever to start adopting feature flags. You used to have to write your own implementation for turning code light and dark and document it yourself. Now there's tools out there like Launch Darkly and Split that make it easy to get this set up within your product and do all of that stuff for you. And just like we do with release checklists, we've used our own tools to try to reduce the friction. So we have a service desk where any team can create a new request and get their new service set up with our internal feature flag service. And finally, you do need to be prepared when something goes wrong, because eventually something will go wrong. And as a product manager, why should you care about incidents? Because incidents affect your customers. And they don't just affect your current customers. They affect the future customers of your product as well. Who knows what this is? It's the fail whale, right, from Twitter. Has it been seen on Twitter.com this decade? No, but everybody still knows that it's associated with Twitter. And with Twitter crashing, and the point I want to make is that incidents like the ones that Twitter saw in 2008 and 2009 stick with your customers for a long time. And you want your customers thinking about how great your service is, not reading articles about how you're going down or you have backup failures or a worst case scenario, you're coming between people and watching Stranger Things. So the key to being a contributor as a PM during an incident is to know your role. Uh, you own the customer relationship, so you really have two main responsibilities. The first one is triage. So you can play a role in assessing the severity of the incident. If we detect a problem where a feature isn't working, a PM is in the best position to assess, how mission critical that feature is and whether we need to get all hands on deck to fix the bug or if it's something we can exercise a little bit more patience on. And the second is communication. During most incidents, it's necessary to communicate either internally or externally about the situation and what steps are being taken to resolve it. At Atlassian, we don't have anything that rivals Stranger Things in terms of importance, but we do recognize the importance of communicating the status of our services. That's why we use status page both internally for our internal services and externally for the services that face our customers. And usually incidents are communicated completely through status page. But whether it's through email or on a bug report or on status page, there's really 4 keys to effective communication during an incident. The first is to take responsibility. You need to always take responsibility for your service, even in a situation like when Amazon goes down and everybody's down. You still want to show that you're in charge, you're in control. The next is to provide clarity. That usually means being clear about exactly what's gone wrong and what the symptoms are. You don't have to go into a huge amount of detail, but you do want to say exactly what you understand about the situation. It should always be active. Don't leave customers with the impression that you don't know what's wrong. You're either investigating the problem or fixing the problem. And there should always be a call to action for the customer, whether it's we will update this page when we have an update, or come back here, or contact support. And finally, this is really one that should hit home: empathy. Incident communications frequently can be written by somebody who's on the more technical side of the business, and they're writing for a technical audience. But in reality, you always want, no matter how technical your users are, you want to write like they're your friend, like you're doing your best to solve their problem because you genuinely care about their feelings. So if there's one thing I want you to take home today, it's that we don't necessarily need to change the definition of what a product manager owns. We can still say that a product manager owns the business value or the customer experience, but the way we deliver software products evolves, and therefore we need to adapt what business value means for our products. So you need to start thinking about how your customers interact with your service during the good times and the bad, and then how you can support your development teams and your operations teams, because at the end of the day, you're all working towards the same goal. Thank you so much, and I hope you had a fantastic summit.